Good morning, everybody. My name is Sonjonchen from Nigeria, and my topic is indoor environmental quality as a performance indicator of sustainable buildings. Case study of a lead standard office building in Nigeria. It is part of a larger doctoral research. Okay, yeah. So as we all know, most of the urbanized population, 90% of urbanized population live in indoors. And that means that indoor environmental quality has an impact on people who live in them. So it has four basic areas that are considered: the thermal, the visual, the acoustic, and the indoor air quality. So the question now is, how do these different parameters affect the well-being of occupants that live in these buildings? And as we all know, well-being is a multidimensional construct. It's quite difficult to ascertain how well-being can be measured. So in the context of this research, the well-being is physical well-being, which has two directions: be measured subjectively and objectively. So the subjective part of it, which is also the hedonic aspect of well-being, looks at how people feel. That's their perspective in these buildings. And then the objective looks at the physiological aspect of their state in this building. So how these different parameters affect them in the buildings. Yeah, so green building standards are emerged as tools to promote sustainable building practices, and they basically have three phases. The first phase, which was in the 1970s, was the prescription phase, which was as a result of energy crisis. And then the second phase was like a development stage, moving to the next level. And then the third phase now is environmental performance, how buildings perform both environmentally and their impact on buildings. So in the global, in developed countries, substantial evidence has shown that buildings that are certified, green certified, positively affect occupants that live in them. There are some findings in other climatic regions that show otherwise, that these buildings don't have difference with those that are not certified. So in Nigeria, in Africa and Nigeria, very few buildings have been certified, but there's no empirical evidence to show how these buildings actually affect occupants in them. So that's why this research was done in Nigeria in a lead standard building to provide empirical facts if LEED certification or any other type of certification has a positive impact on occupants. So the aim of the study, like I said, also evaluates the impact of indoor environmental quality as a performance indicator of sustainable construction, using this building with focus on well-being, physical well-being of occupants. So the objectives were twofold. One, to assess the actual indoor environmental quality performance of the building, comparing these values that are in the building against the standard benchmarks by WHO, ASHRAE, and then LEED. And then the second objective was to examine the relationship between the occupants' perception of their well-being and these key parameters that have been measured in the buildings. So this is the building that was used for case study. It was done according to LEED standard, attempted different categories of LEED, other sustainable sites, energy and atmosphere, water efficiency, and indoor air quality. So the methodology for the research, a mixed method was adopted for this research, and the building has 3 levels, because if you go across different zones of the building, the parameters, the environmental parameters may be different. So the research was done across the ground, the first and the second floor, and data was collected over dry and rainy seasons to measure for the variability in weather conditions. So the research focused on ventilation, temperature, humidity, CO2, and particulate matter, using a 2-year IAQ monitor and airflow. Then the cross-sectional survey to get the objective part of the well-being. Fitbit wristwatches were used because they've been deployed in health research to test human vitals in different parts of the world. So they were adopted in this research, and then also a research which gets the subjective responses of the occupants, was adopted from the CBT. So this shows the data collection method, which is fourfold. The first one was the Google survey form to get their subjective assessment of IEQ. Second one was the evaluation of indoor environmental performance with the monitor. The third option was to do the assessment with the wristwatches, and then also, of course, the building audit to look physically the kind of strategies that were adopted in the buildings. All of this was geared towards measuring how the indoor environmental quality impacts the occupants in the building. So this was a setup in one of the sections on site with the IEQ monitor. Yeah, so because data collection was threefold. The first one was the monitor. So the monitor, after measuring for a period of time, automatically generated graphs with the mean values and the variation. Why? For the occupants in the building, because we're able to see how these buildings impact occupants. Or the occupants need to have lived in the building for a long time. There's somebody who has been in the building for just a year or less may not feel the impact, right? So the survey was carefully selected for occupants who have worked in this building for at least 5 years to be able to check if this has affected them, and also to eliminate bias. That's why the researches were used. So 68 questionnaires were distributed and 40 responses were received. Then there was a correlation analysis to examine the statistical relationship between these parameters and the well-being parameters that have been measured that will show in the findings. So for over the raining and the dry season, these are the results. Over the raining and dry season, the IEQ parameters, PM 2.5, CO2, CO, temperature, all of those things were well within benchmarks of WHO, ASHRAE, and LEED. So it shows that the building was performing very, very well within this range. Then for the questionnaire, most of the occupants in the building, because the company that owns the building is a construction company, most of the occupants in the building were built environmental professionals. And then they had long work exposure, like I said, minimum of 8 hours in the building every day. So overall, their perception, they agree that air quality, thermal comfort, and all of those parameters were very good in the building. The key challenge was noise, and the noise was as a result of colleagues moving around, or printers, or maybe nearby vehicles. That was a key challenge in the building. Then for the correlation analysis, well-being showed strong negative correlations with CO2. So what this means is that because the CO2 values in the buildings were okay, the people who were in those buildings were fairly comfortable. So overall, CO2, VOC. So situating this research now with what has been done in other parts of the world, it now shows that buildings that are designed and constructed with green actually have good performance overall. And these are the findings for the benchmarking, like I said earlier, against the standards, and they were very, very within the limits, showing that the building was performing optimally. Recommendations, because this is just a building in Nigeria, but the larger research, because we have very few certified buildings in Nigeria. So the larger research now is looking at all the LEED certified buildings and doing a comparative study, not just benchmarking against whole standard, but comparing them with their counterparts that are on the same level. Because buildings that are being looked at in the study are minimum of 15 to 18 floors. So all the LEED buildings that are certified within that range are the ones that are not certified, so that it can be a proper comparative study to also situate this with what has been done, the research that has been done globally. Thank you.
Thank you. have a question. I maybe missed it, but how was the productivity measured? Does the answers from the
subjective? So it's subjective, self-reported.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the very direct questions. If you feel because living in a building, certain parameters improve your productivity. So that's self-reported. That's part of subjective response. Yeah. Because it's really difficult to measure productivity. There are certain scales, but in this context, it's strictly.
Yeah. It's a study by itself.
Yeah.
Because it requires a lot of material.
Yeah.
Okay.
So did you ask them also as a self-reported question about the CO2?
No.
The
CO2 is strictly the monitor, because they can't know the levels of CO2.
Exactly. You cannot. How do you know the CO2? Nobody knows.
No, we can't.
Okay.
So it's the monitor that measures CO2.
Okay. And that could relate to the performance, actually.
But this is really an interesting study because the lead has done like in the northern hemisphere, I think they are set there. So very interesting to see how it works in Nigeria.
Where is this in Nigeria?
Abuja.
I thought so. Yeah.
Is it a residential building or our office?
No, it's an office building.
Office building, yes.
We have only 5 certified LEED buildings in Nigeria, and they are all office buildings. Only 5 in Nigeria. I know because why the adoption rate of these green certifications is low, because there's no empirical evidence to show that LEED buildings or green buildings actually perform better. That's in our part of the world. There are no empirical evidence. So one would wonder, why should I spend so much money to get a green certification when there's nothing attached to it? So part of what the research is doing is providing, this is the office building, providing this evidence that can also improve maybe the adoption in the market and all.
I was also wondering about the power supply. I mean, I haven't been to Nigeria for a long time, but I know that in Lagos there were issues with interruptions in the power supply, and so being in a building where you have photovoltaic implies that at least you have and in terms of well-being, I'd imagine that would have an effect if you have uninterrupted power. I was also wondering whether you see this as a way that Africa as a continent can leapfrog a lot of the problems that we have here in the global north in terms of poor building design and needing to retrofit and so on, by making sure that these standards are implemented. If you find after a comparative study that they are that much better, whether we can use this as a model to leapfrog a lot of the problems in the global north.
The findings from the comparative study will actually answer these questions. They will tell if these buildings were proposed, but now it still remains a question. Yeah. But in terms of power, power is a problem in Africa. We don't have power like here. Once in a while, power goes off and off. So buildings need to have alternative power supply. This building has solar panels, and then there's also a generator run on diesel the whole day. So those are the issues.
Okay, right. So now change the presentation for Julia and Adam.
Do you want me to be in charge of the power?
Yeah, that's the question if you want to.
I can take the control if you want.
But I will sit because I have a back injury and I have to get back to Dublin today.
Do you want me to stand or sit?
I don't mind. You can have whatever you want to do to make it feel comfortable.
Okay.
Should we start?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Julia Blanke. I'm a behavioral psychologist and I work at the University College Cork, and I'm presenting with my colleague Adam.
Hi everyone, Adam Hearn from the University of Basel, social scientist, also researching on the same ENPOWER project here as Julia.
Exactly. We are presenting while we are working in the ENPOWER project, we are presenting how social dimensions can be used to inform energy tool development.
And basically, the overall vision of ENPOWER is really to design and demonstrate that these methodologies can work together with the technological side to make sure that we end up having really empowered citizens. That's what we're working towards. We include 6 different pilot projects, and really the project bridges that gap that there is between social science and technology. We often talk about this, trying to develop innovative tools that don't just support the growth of the communities, but also empower individual members to actively participate in the energy transition. And most importantly, what we would say is that it's about creating solutions with the communities rather than just for the communities. And within the project, the development of digital tools is really central. And this is to support the energy communities in managing the energy production, consumption, and distribution, the sharing of the energy. The technological side of the tool development is very advanced and well-resourced, but there is still this critical disconnect between the tool developers and the end users. And the end users tend to be the actual members of different energy communities. We've got these 6 different project sites. As in most of these projects, we have different sites around different parts of Europe. So as you can see, we've got the 4 front runners with Ireland, Austria, Portugal, and Greece, and then 2 early adopters of Spain and Hungary.
So we organized deliberative workshops in 3 pilot sites in Ireland, Austria, and Portugal, which sparked a wide range of insightful discussion, for example, financial drivers, technical aspects, educational concerns, regulatory frameworks, and environmental impacts. So interestingly, in my experience working with renewable energy communities across Europe, since quite a while, regardless of the specific topic introduced, the core themes of discussion have consistently been very similar. While the intensity and focus may vary from one context to another, the conversations almost always revolve around the same fundamental issues.
And in addition, we also did 2 focus groups, and these were workshops with both prototype testers and also prototype non-testers, so people that hadn't seen any of these apps and didn't really know that much about it, but were also members of the energy community, and this was in the Austrian pilot site.
So in almost all of our pilot sites, ENPOWER is developing tools tailored specifically for each local energy community. However, the broader goal is to scale these tools for use in other energy communities as well. And these tools are designed for everyday community members to empower managing the production, distribution, and consumption of energy, and to support the decentralization, participation, and behavioral change. So most people have certain expectations based on the apps they use daily, how they look, feel, and function. And if energy tools don't follow these familiar design patterns or use user experience standards, they risk being confusing or even unusable for people with lower digital or energy literacy. What may feel intuitive to a developer might not make sense to the average user.
That being said, one of the most recurring challenges that we observed is that the tools are often developed for the communities. Oh, sorry. There we go. So yeah, they're developed for the communities rather than with the communities. So we often have this idea of misaligned assumptions where the target group isn't really engaged properly or consulted even. So the issue goes beyond development. There's also a gap in how we integrate the social approaches. Community insights gathered through valuable social research methods are often just not translated into actionable technical specifications. So this results in underutilized social insights. And that leads to this persisting disconnect between the developers and the end users, caused by knowledge gaps and very different communication styles as well. And ultimately, we see limited adoption, and the tools might be really technically sophisticated, but they just don't engage the end users. And the consequences of this can be quite severe. You can end up with a poor user experience, but you can also end up with reduced trust and in some cases even complete abandonment of the platform. So this can be a real issue.
So to overcome this gap, we need real collaboration. Effective co-design must involve closer continuous integration between technical teams and social researchers to bridge these gaps and create tools that truly work for the communities they aim to serve. So current tool development is primarily driven by technical demands of the energy assets, but often ad hoc and lacking solid foundation in relation to psychological frameworks. And the systematic integration of social and behavioral dimensions into tool design remains underexplored, mainly due to unactionable recommendations. And what we did as a first step, our work proposes an attempt to systematically align digital tool developments with behavioral and social dimensions.
So what did we do? First of all, we identified the key social dimensions based on input from the workshops, and themes like education, inclusivity, personal relevance emerged as essential aspects to integrate into digital tools. And these help other people, the actual users, to feel more oriented, welcome, and personally addressed with these apps. And second, we selected 2 specific community tools that were developed within the ENPOWER project, and we examined their user interfaces, their features, their functionalities, using clear definitions for each of the social dimensions that we were looking at. We systematically assessed whether these aspects were fully included, partially included, or not included at all. And to ensure robustness, what we did is we had multiple reviewers who evaluated the tools independently, and the final results were built by averaging their assessments. And by doing so, we were mapping the features of the social dimensions that can serve as an exemplar for future development, so for other apps, as well as to also help with the feedback for these existing apps. And the unmapped social dimensions can be indicative of missing features that can then be included, of course.
As mentioned, we found a variety of social dimensions, as for example, collaboration or privacy, and in total we are currently working with 19 categories. A few examples I like to give you an impression of the clear definitions we used. For our analysis, for example, education supports user learning and literacy around energy systems and technology, empowering informed decision-making. Or fairness and inclusivity promotes accessibility and relevance for diverse user groups, considering different languages, abilities, and backgrounds. I skipped the next 2 because of the timing.
Okay, so let's have a quick look at the actual apps that we selected and analyzed. So we have the Cartif tool. You're probably all familiar with Cartif. Cartif is a private non-profit which does applied research and technology, and basically they're multidisciplinary. They focus on smart cities. And the second tool is REPower, developed by the REPower group in Austria, and it's a young energy cooperative in Austria, founded in 2018. 19 citizens founded it, and it's a citizen energy cooperative, so a Genossenschaft, we'd say in German, organized to enable people to directly participate in the energy transition. And they offer a peer-to-peer online marketplace for renewable energy, which is generated by the members. And the platform really handles matching producers with consumers, as well as bidding and supply. And they've got a very clear business model, which is quite different from the Cartif tool, as you'll see as we go through this. From these descriptions, the 2 selected tools are developed under very different circumstances and for very, very different purposes.
Let's look a little bit deeper into the tools and what we did. The Cartif app is designed to support citizens in both creating and strengthening their energy communities, while also helping users discover existing communities they might want to join. Cartif aims to be used across multiple European countries, and as such, it offers multi-language support, making the tool more accessible to a wider audience. And when we look at the REPower app in a moment, we'll see that it is currently developed exclusively for the Austrian pilots or market, and therefore is only available in Germany. Additionally, the Cartif planning tool provides tailored information for different user groups, from ordinary citizens to energy experts. This makes it more inclusive as it takes into account language diversity, user ability levels, and varied backgrounds. One of the key strengths of the Cartive planning tool is its educational component. The tool includes helpful features throughout. For example, as you can see here, there's a question mark icon. When clicked, it provides additional explanations such as what is self-sufficiency and what does it mean. This kind of built-in guidance is especially valuable for users who may be new to energy concepts, helping to make the tool more accessible and informative.
And the REPower tools, as we said earlier, has a very different purpose because really it's designed around the membership of the cooperative. So it's for members. So when users sign up, either as small scale producers, consumers, or prosumers of renewable energy, they can then access this app. And at first glance, the model may seem quite individualistic. So somebody offers energy, somebody else buys it. But actually, in reality, the underlying vision is quite collective. It's to work together towards a shared energy future and actively contribute to the energy transition. And using the marketplace doesn't actually mean that you're necessarily going to lower your bills, your actual cost. But what it does do is it will ensure that the energy is fair, local, renewable, and that it supports the decentralization of the energy system. And the app's very simple to use, very user-friendly. It shows your personal and community energy consumption, and it will then send you these notifications to inform you when it's a good time to use energy or to not use energy. So you might get, as an example, a message come up that says, use energy between 12 and 1 o'clock today. And this kind of real life feedback makes the app very personally relevant and actionable for the users. So the response to the notifications is intentionally simple. So you can choose between, yes, I'm in, bin dabei, or I don't have any time, kind of side. Very, very simple. So the users choose between that. And it's a really lightweight interaction, but it means that it encourages engagement without really overwhelming the user. And by indicating when it's best to use the energy, the app really helps to optimize the local energy consumption, increasing self-consumption within the community, and that then reduces the need to import energy from external sources.
So let's look at the results. So both tools, Cartive and REPower, are still under development. So we have to take this in consideration. And not all features were available at the time of our analysis. So what you're seeing here is essentially a snapshot from early September this year. And we have to be careful. We presented the results side by side, but it is important to remember that the two tools are at very different stages of development and serve distinct purposes. To assess the integration of social dimensions, we used simple coding system. As Adam already mentioned, 1 for included, 0.5 for partially included, and 0 for not included. We then averaged the scores across multiple reviews for each dimension. And as you can see, Cartive scores highly in fairness and inclusivity, while REPower performs strongly in relevance and simplicity. For example, Cartive appears to score lower in areas like privacy, but that might be due to features not being visible yet or still in development. Similarly, for education, REPower provides a good amount of guidance on how the system works and how to sign up. However, more basic explanations like what a kilowatt hour actually is are currently missing, which is why this category was marked as only partially included. So if a tool scores high across relevant social dimensions, it can be used as exemplar for similar applications. And if a tool has little support for certain social dimensions, it is worthwhile considering if the inclusion of such features could be beneficial.
So at the moment, we only have preliminary conclusions. It needs to be pointed out that we're very grateful to the tool developers, so both REPower and Cartive, for giving us access to these tools at the early stage of app development. And without their support, this just wouldn't have been possible at all. But throughout this work, we set out to achieve 3 main goals. There's a methodology that's going to help to bridge this gap between the insights from the community engagement through to the technical support side. So this will actually involve the actual development of the tools, but also by reviewing real tool features against the social concerns that were raised during the engagement activities. We aim to offer more actionable and impactful recommendations. So this isn't just theory, this is putting things into place. It makes this research transdisciplinary and of far more use. And it's important to note that we only had access to these 2 applications, and they're both still under development. And as such, not all the features were available all the time. The results could be interpreted in a myriad of different ways, and they offer insights rather than definitive conclusions. And we're aware, of course, that a key limitation of our approach is that the alignment between these social dimensions and the tool features is always going to be subjective to some extent. So we try to mitigate this by using very clear definitions and also by averaging out the evaluations between multiple reviewers to make sure that we had greater consistency and balance.
Some references, and that's it from us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Some questions for Julia and Adam?
I've got a couple of questions. I have a couple of questions, basically about the development of the tools. So you've been asking the prospective users about both tools, I presume. So when you asked for these requirements, did you only use the prospective users, or did you use to help developers, some experts in usability or user-centric design?
We used us. So we were the test bed for this. So it was the researchers themselves, a group of researchers, who, it's not just us two, there's other people involved. Because with the qualitative tool, there aren't any users at the moment. It's still in the phase where it hasn't reached users, it hasn't reached the market, although it's available. It's had a soft launch, so this isn't something where users are finding it unless they're deliberately searching for it. Whereas the REPower tool is being used within the community. So there are people that are using it.
I'm asking that because sometimes a user-centered design is very useful, but sometimes the user, it's not that he doesn't know what is good for it, for him or for her, but sometimes you need to have an expert in usability to guide for the developers, the people who are actually doing the code. You need also, yes, it's super important, and I fully agree with that, to have the prospective users involved in the design, but also you need experts in usability to guide that.
What's been really curious, I would say, in this particular project, looking at these tools, is some of the findings have been not what we would have necessarily expected. So as an example, if you look at trust, the REPower tool scores very, very highly in trust. People really, if you have it, then you trust it 100%. And the users reported that they would be quite happy and they want live data. Live data is a problem because as soon as you have live data, people can also say, well, I can look at the patterns, I can tell when someone's not in their home, when the home's empty. So if I'm a thief and I want to break in, and there's a whole series of security concerns that surround that, which we expected the users would report, and yet for them there was no issue here, and they would rather have live data. Not having live data means that in terms of security, they also score very high because there isn't this risk that something's going to happen because it is purely based on the predictions for the following day. But there's also a cost involved with getting the live data. So when you factor that in, it's actually when you look at the energy behavior change that's potentially possible through this app, is there a requirement for live data, or can we achieve it using the predictive data? And I would suggest that there isn't necessarily a need for the live data, even though this is what the users were asking for.
Yeah,
thank you for the question.
Good.
Do you believe there's a difference between the members that produce also electricity and the member of they only consume the energy? Is there a difference for all subjects that you use?
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think of that?
If I understand your question correctly, you mean for the hour power?
For example, yeah.
Okay.
Because there is the strong I produce or I consume.
Yeah.
I mean, there are also consumers. There is kind of a difference in such a way that they need to find each other.
Yeah.
The Our Power platform facilitates, or the marketplace facilitates, the opportunity to find an producer, maybe locally, you are interested in. They have profiles you can look up. You can see, okay, they have wind energy or PVs or water or whatever you are interested in as a consumer, and you can then sign up and make with this particular producer a price. Sorry,
a
yeah.
little bit more of it. Is there a difference to use it? It's like if some a customer use the app, is there different of the one that produce energy?
Oh, yeah,
Also,
they are different. Yeah. The app itself is for if I understood this correctly, is for everyone. So it's for producers and consumers.
Yeah.
They have a platform behind it. So for the cooperative, so when you sign up, you get it. You can, when you are a producer, you can do your profile. You have different overview of your data, what you are producing, what can you sell, and such things. So, and the consumer have their own profiles. So there is a difference in how the data is shown, how you are shown on the platform and such. Yeah.
And only the producer have the live data, for sure.
Everybody gets the choice of taking action or not taking action. If I understand you correctly, what you're asking is whether
Which
the
one have the-
producers are more responsive than the people that just consume. And I think it's too early for us to be able to determine that. What I would imagine is going to be the case is that people that have their own energy that they're also producing are a little bit more sensitive to taking part. At the same time, what I think is really, really cool about the REPower thing in Austria is that it's not, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just about the cost. It's often the energy price is not going to be cheaper than what you would pay if you were just signed up with a regular energy producer. The consumers that sign up, that just consume, are often connected to those producers. So if I happen to know that Hulstor has photovoltaic panels on his house and is signed up to REPower, I might say, well, I want to join as well, because this gives him the opportunity to say he can sell to me at a different price. And he might say, well, I actually don't like it, so I'm going to sell it at exactly the same price. Or he might say, hey, you know what? I'm going on holiday for 2 weeks. I'm not going to be using any of my own energy. I'm going to give it to you for 2 weeks. Or to his mother. 2 weeks, free energy. Or he might say, well, actually, after that, I'm going to give 1 kilowatt here to a friend, and I'm going to sell another 3 kilowatts to this person who I've just met. And then as we become closer friends, I'll reduce the price. So these social interactions are really quite interesting. And this is where consumers are more likely to sign up, because they suddenly go, isn't it great? I'm buying the energy directly from you. I'd much rather you had the money than some random energy company that has nothing to do with me. So it really is community forming.
Thanks.
Thank you. So let's jump to Katrin Burgstaller from the Energieinstitut under JKU Linz.
Thank you. I will present the From Rural Success to Urban Challenges, a critical evaluating the legal framework for energy prosumption in Austria of a socio-spatial perspective. So I connect my presentation on the, from Adam and his colleague, because I present a little bit the legal part. So I make it the legal things really easy, so you will understand it. Now I give you a little brief introduction of my non-university organization. Sorry, it was fast. So this one. Energieinstitut under Johannes Kepler University. There's a link behind them if you want to see that. You research on the website. We are a non-university research organization, but we do interdisciplinary research on renewable energies from an economic, legal, and technical perspective. So, sorry. And now I jump in my presentation. In my talk, I will explain the background of the project. It's a national project, give you an overview of the legal framework of prosumers, that means producer and also consumers of electricity. I will also share some numbers about energy communities in Austria and outline the legal basis for shared energy usage and right regarding housing and installation of power plants. Then I will briefly describe how Austrian cities work in the context. And the last 2 slides, I will present some interim results of the project. So the project calls UrbEnPro. We have the research perspective, a spatial planning aspect, the social aspect, and the legal framework analysis in the. So far, the research has mainly focused on the technical and administrative issues. The legal impact on social and spatial aspects has been a little bit explored. So our project aims to address exactly this gap. In my presentation, I have 2 main questions. So the first one is, why are energy consumption in rural areas generally more common than in urban areas? And the second one is, what challenges exist in the urban areas? I want to give you a first answer right now. So far, we have observed that electricity law has effects on social and spatial context. So let me explain it, how we come to this overall observation. The picture on the right side is made by my own. So I only want to explain you the difference. So this slide shows the legal models to share electricity in Austria. So there are 3 main models. At first, that means GEA. It stands for Community Generation Installation. This has existed since 2017, and it's a long time that it's possible to install a power plant on your building and share the energy in this house, in this building, in this property. And there is no grid cost because they're only in one building. So you see it on the picture on the left side. It's on the level, yeah. And then we have the 2 energy communities implicated. The renewable energy community is from the Renewable Energy Directive. So there are members must be proximity to renewable energy projects. In Austria, this proximity is defined by the electricity infrastructure. So that's the reason for my picture. There are 2 kinds of REC. It's a regional one that can share electricity up to substation level, so grid level 7 to 4, or the middle of 4. That's the 2 on the right side. And there's also a local REC that can produce renewable energy with smaller grid area. It only means the grid level 7 to 6. And there you can exchange the electricity between the members. Both of these kinds of renewable energy communities benefits from a reduction in grid fees. And the last one is the citizen energy community. It's based on the Electricity Intermarket Directive, and this model has no range restriction. So, they can produce and distribute electricity across the entire Austria grid. So, of course, there are more legal details, but they were too much for this talk, because I have some other legal points. On this slide, this is a quick overview about the energy communities in Austria. So in 2021, there is establishments, the legal framework for energy communities. You see there are the RECs, 230 RECs and 5 citizen energy communities, but today there are more than 4,800 of renewable energy. So the picture on the right side, there's only an overview. This data comes from a voluntary register and are not complete. They only provide a roof overview. But there's also the link inside that's from the authority that you can list it and show it a little bit. So In this register, you can filter to show only renewable energy communities. I did this, and the results are showing in the 3 small images on the slides. You see on the left side Vienna, for example. Vienna tends, there are only 1 or 2 renewable energies in the center of the city, and the most are around of the center, so they are more outside. Similar is it in Salzburg and Graz. There is no renewable energy in the center, they are more outside from the city. So therefore there's an imbalance in the number and distribution of energy communities inside and outside of the cities. So now I'm here for the shared energy use meets housing conditions in urban areas. There are 2 parts of the legal framework that are really important. So the one part on the left, there are requirements of the electricity law. You need to know that members of energy communities are connected through the public electricity grid. This is different to the GEA because that's only in one property and don't use the public grid. But it's important that in each of these models, the members with generation and also consumption facilities participate with the meter point number. So this number is affixed to a local and provide to a local area and provides access to the grid. So if someone moves, they cannot take this number with them. So it's usually not possible to remain a part of the same renewable energy community or area. It's a little bit easier for the citizen energy communities to switch them. On the right side, there are 2 important points from tenancy and ownership law. So at first, the tenants are generally unable to generate their own electricity because only the property owner can make that decision. On the second point is the situation is different for flat owners. All flat owners can decide together whether to install a solar panel installation on the rooftop. So this shows that tenants generally have less opportunity to generate their own electricity than owners of a flat or of a building. So nevertheless, anyone in an energy community can also just consume the electricity, but most people don't know that. So I'm a lawyer, so I'm not really perfect, but I summarized a little bit some facts about Austrian cities. So my talk focused mainly on the urban area, so I want to briefly explain some special aspects of Austrian cities. So at first, the comparison suburbs versus cities. Income is usually a bit higher in suburbs than in cities in the center or in some parts of the cities. In the rural area, there are many small villages with most family single family houses, and then normally are the owner of the houses. So the second point is the difference between ownership and rental housing. Many people in Austrian city rent. And Vienna is a special city in Austria because it's the biggest city and also a federal state. So they have some special legal requirements. And it's also important to know that the spatial difference between rural and urban areas being social difference too. And the social and spatial relatives don't always match the structure of the electricity grid. So, for example, in Vienna, it may be that the house and one street are different network areas, so different network areas. So even a neighborhood can be supplied by different transformer stations or substations. So it's not possible to be in the same renewable energy community. Because you need to know the meter point number, and you need to know your number and your neighbor, and needs to ask him which number do you have. So I am come to my 2 last slides. So I will connect what I have presented so far with the observed abstractly and concluded with the legal simplest way to share energy in Austria. So this slide highlighted the key findings and challenges for energy community, especially in the urban context. So there are now 3 points. The first challenge is the unclear spatial overlap. Electricity grid infrastructure often does not match the political and social boundaries, which is especially evident in cities and in Vienna. So the area required for energy sharing may differ from that visually apparent. The second one is the leak of transfer the membership. When someone joins an energy community, they are linked to a specific meter point. This cannot be transferred when they move house, so it's unclear whether they can still be a member of after the moving. So the last one, the property rights also play a crucial role. Property owners in rural and sub-area areas generally have a clear decision-making advantage when it comes to install an energy system such as a solar panel. Tenants, however, usually need their landlord's consent. And in buildings with multiple owners or multiple flat owners, a consension is needed before we install a solar panel, for example. So the findings demonstrate the legal condition, technical infrastructure, and property rights all influence who can participate in an energy community and the condition under which they can do so. And I have a first solution. We have 3 models, and every model fits to another situation. So the first one is the GEA. The model is most suitable for city centers. This is because the model only depends on the structure and legal requirements of the building and the ownership. It's a little bit easier. So the renewable energy community is most suitable for smaller villages and smaller towns because of its limited range with the electricity grid. So in larger cities with historical ground splitter layouts, it's difficult to match the electricity infrastructure to the way that people actually use the space. And the last one, it's the most flexible one because anyone can participate regardless of where the metering point is located. This model makes it easier to connect consumers from the urban area to the generation facilities in rural areas. So back to the key lesson, the impact of electricity legislation depends on the specific social and spatial context. Thank you very much. That's only a picture from my colleague that helps me in the research context and the other colleagues from the project.
Any question for Katrin?
I don't have a question, I have a comment. We were talking about this yesterday, and regarding the issues with the legislation and the normative, this is an absolute, at least in Spain, it has advanced slowly in recent years, but it is a nightmare. And then you have all these administrative layers, which makes things even more complicated.
It makes, yeah.
And when you were talking about it, and I think it makes sense, and it seems to be super clear that it's much easier to set up an energy community where there is a records like in rural areas and I suppose you have something to do about it, about the people know each other, and it seems to be easy, and they trust each other. And apart from the thing you said about the grid, which is also another issue, because you have it seems that to set up these energy communities is certainly easier in a smaller area.
Yeah, normally yes, but there are some of the smaller energy communities told me that it's also not really easy to find the right neighbor because some neighbors told, so I produce my own electricity on my house, I don't need the other one.
Mm.
And tenants also don't know that they can also be a part of energy community without to produce electricity. It's also possible to consume it, and they don't know it.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
The information is another.
Yeah.
The lack of information in the population is another big issue. Yeah.
I remember 2 stories. One story is from one energy. They told me the mayor of a little village. Mayor, is it wrong? Yeah.
Mayor.
Yeah. they was very helpful because the people trust him. So they say, yeah, come on, we want to make an energy community. You can also a part of that. It's very easy. Another guy told me there was in an energy community a motivation person, and he goes on every door and knocked on and said, hey, there's an idea. I want to do that. Do you want to be a part of that?
We have that experience in a project called React in La Gracia, some of the pilots, and it was the trust thing is super important because if you have a figure in the community that is trusted, they can convince, and it was like that, they can convince the people to join the community. I'll pass you the details later on because we wrote a few papers on that. But the trust thing, together with engagement.
But I know this one, it's not really an energy community, it's more a visual one. This part, what I talk, that's really in an energy community, and there's no really option to interact. The most people in Austria, they be in an energy community, but they are thinking so it's a normal electricity contract. And in every community, there are some people, they do all the things in one of the energy community, and the one of the other part, they only consume.
Can I ask, I mean, Austria had very clear and strict regulation around energy and energy communities and so on. I was wondering, how is it aligning with the EU legislation? Do you know anything?
How is it aligning? It's matched really near.
It is matching because there's a lot of legislation coming from the EU.
Yeah, it's matched really clear, but they want to make a new electricity law and wants to have some solution for the past. So there was some problems, so they want to fix it. And they have a new idea that citizen energy communities, for example, that if there are bigger companies in there, they should be near from the project. So it's also in a lower part because there is a problem in the balancing group. Do you know what I mean? It's the thing, every smart meter point is in a balancing group, and the share of energy in energy communities don't need to pay in for this balancing group. So there's a big leak and it produces so much cost and it's not showing. So the reason they are a little bit difficult. So it's we are between some points. The one point is the infrastructure things and the idea and what they want the infrastructure, and the other side is that what the people need to be a part of the energy. Yeah.
It's really wonderful to see because I live in Germany, so the comparison with Germany is it seems like Austria is very, very advanced. But I was wondering what you were thinking about how we can try and engage social housing and tenants more in this kind of thing, and whether the German model of the whole Balkonkraftwerk.
Yeah, but it's a little one it's not a part of.
No, it wouldn't fit in any of these that you described because it's on such a small scale. But I wonder if at least that's one way that we can engage these tenants.
Yeah, it's really difficult. We are working now on our project. If we want to have some recommendation, how it could be work a little bit easier.
Yeah, cool.
But typical in Austria, nobody wants to do something. We have enough to do.
Thank you. Let's jump to Leena Eerolainen from the VTT Technical Research Center of Finland.
Yes. Hello everyone, I'm Leena from VTT and here is my colleague Mia and I'm presenting our research that we've been doing together. And I have a background in the humanities and Mia has a background in engineering. So this is also an attempt to really kind of like bridge the gap between these two disciplines to kind of like disciplines to understand the issue more holistically. And I'm about to present about citizen energy resilience in Finland. Wait a second. Oh, this one. Yes. And briefly about the agenda. First, some new conceptualizations of resilience terminology related to energy. So obviously, resilience can be talked about in various different layers and levels. So today we will focus on energy and kind of like not the whole package, so to speak. And a few words about preparedness in Finland, because we are often said to be one of the kind of like exemplary countries of preparedness, internationally speaking, but maybe to point out some gaps there and also what's the status at the moment. And then on with the results about citizen energy resilience and how it's currently in our country. And these are preliminary results. The REPower-EU project is still ongoing, and we are in a work package or in a kind of like sub project, which the deliverable will be a clean energy transition roadmap for our government. So this is kind of like part of that research. So just a few words about resilience concept. So I think many of you might be aware or know the kind of like common energy resilience conceptualization by International Energy Agency. And here the focus is very much on the energy system, but also you see words such as capacity for adaptation, learning, and transformation. On the other hand, we have societal resilience, and there are multiple definitions for that one, but this is kind of like conjoined one, where again, we are talking about the capacity of social systems this time to absorb, adapt to, and transform in its response to external stresses. So in both cases, you have this external stress that somehow affects the system, and then we need to not only bounce back, but bounce forward to learn from that disturbance and see how can we do better next time. And the new concept that we've used in this research is one of co-resilience. And this is not community resilience. This is co-resilience, meaning that we need a systematic multi-stakeholder approach that will strengthen kind of like the holistic energy resilience understanding. And the co-resilience is located in the space between the technical and the societal. So we need a system that will support both the people and so that the people can then support the technical system. So kind of like an interaction between these two. And this is still kind of like a work in progress, like how we want to really define this and what kind of things should be included. But yeah, this is kind of like the conceptualization that we are working with at the moment for this work. And then we've been talking about citizen energy resilience. And even though energy resilience as such is often discussed in Finland and is part of our official strategies of preparedness, citizen energy resilience is not so much known, and people don't really talk about it much in the municipalities, on the NGO level. So it's kind of like a new concept. And how we defined it is that it's a capacity to adapt to disruptions in energy supply, and both service interruptions, long-time power outs, or price spikes. So kind of like how to handle these disruptions. That's what we see as citizen energy resilience. It's also a component of our comprehensive security, should be a component of both climate and energy policies. And as I mentioned, it's a multidimensional construct, so it includes both technical, social, and communal aspects. And this is the but, it shouldn't be just a technological matter. It shouldn't be just an individual responsibility. So we need these models of engagement and institutional support to really kind of like make this reality so that it actually works. Currently, I would say it's that we have Lego blocks and we have plus blocks. Both are Danish, but you can't really put them together. So that's the current system, and we obviously want to create a system where we have something new that works pretty like a well-oiled machine. Easier said than done, obviously. So a few words about Finland and how the state of resilience is currently. So because I would say, because of our geopolitical situation and our location. Geographically, we have very strong national preparedness strategies that are updated, I think every 5 years or something, yes. But citizen level energy resilience is less discussed. Obviously, energy resilience makes an appearance, but that's also the very kind of like system level. And what we see in, for example, security strategy for society, which was just updated this year, we see a lot of actors appearing there. We see talk about individual responsibility. We see talk about the role of the NGOs, but it's just, I would say, throwing in the words, saying that you need to do this, you need to do this, without giving any tangible kind of like ways to work with actually how to do that. Wait a second. Yes, and also not only the kind of like geographical situation or geopolitical situation, our country is located in the north, so cold climate is very important when we consider resilience and the importance of energy resilience. And here's some data for you. Almost half of the Finns live in detached houses, and with detached houses you can have many different kind of resilience measures. You can have fireplaces, something to kind of like back up, something with kind of like backup power to keep the heat. And in Finland, it's, I think, in many cases about the heat, how to keep the houses warm when it's minus 15 outside, for example, and you have a 3-day like electricity power out. And our calculations show that actually within a few days you would have, if the houses would go cold, if people wouldn't know what to do, like how to keep them warm, and if they didn't have any measures, resilience measures, we would expect around 1 million people to be evacuated within a few days if there was a long-term power outage and the temperature was minus 15 or even below that. So that's kind of like the scale of the problem, that even though it seems such a small thing to talk about the fireplace or talk about some individual house, but on like big scale, this is the thing that we are kind of like dealing with in Finland. And also depending on whether the building is new or whether it's old, obviously it plays a huge role. Now I will, yes. So for this research, we wanted to interview some NGOs. And why is that? Well, as I mentioned, our strategies, social security strategy, explicitly points out that NGOs are a very important building block of the kind of like preparedness system. So we wanted to see whether the NGOs agree actually at all, and also see like have they discussed about energy resilience or citizen energy resilience at all. And this is just like a preliminary coding. We have very different kind of answers there, but I would say that this is kind of like the saturation point where we've started getting similar and similar answers for everything. If you're thinking about the burial services, we also interviewed the Lutheran Church of Finland, and they brought up that as a part of citizen energy resilience, we should also keep in mind like how to pay respect for the deceased. So kind of like it's like connected on many different levels. No, I'm always pushing the wrong button. I'm sorry. This. And based on the interviews, we have figured out or outlined some key challenges. The first of which is obviously socioeconomic inequality. So energy efficient renovations would be a very good resilience measure, obviously, and kind of like getting these up-to-date heating systems into houses, but not all citizens can afford them. Also, one NGO pointed out that it's even if they could afford them. There might be some, people might not be so interested in doing that. So for that, you need not the kind of like engineering kind of way to figure out that, oh, but it's so efficient. But he had a story that they spent like hours drinking coffee with the customer, the elderly person. And after those hours of drinking coffee together, the elderly person finally decided that, okay, actually he's going to do the renovations. So that was kind of like a very tangible example of how these kind of things could be tackled with the help of NGOs, for example. Then we have geographical disparities. Rural areas often have better technical preparedness, but aging populations struggle with physical tasks. So in Finland, about 90% of people over the age of 85 still live in their own houses. And a lot of them also live in the rural areas. So even though we say that maybe the mindset is better resilience-wise, but are the physical capabilities or functionality, are they up to par with that mindset? I see some disparities there. And on the other hand, in the urban areas, kind of like resilience measure can be quite limited because of the district heating network. So what can an individual flat do or the household do who lives in a flat? That's one thing. And I think according to our research, the urban dwellers don't even think about it that much. Oh, electricity will come from somewhere. Will it? Well, anyway, then one more challenge is fragmented communication. So basically we have very many different kind of preparedness guides in Finland under 3 different ministries, in different web pages, how to even look for those. I mean, if I had difficulties, I'm sure the vulnerable elderly person will have even more difficulties. It's many of those are in digital format and they exclude many groups, and some voices are largely just missing. For example, immigrant voices and sociocultural factors, languages. So yeah, we have a huge data of media news, 881 actually news reporting that we are also using to kind of like see how resilience is discussed in media. And in 881 news reporting or news reports, we don't see one single immigrant voice arising. So we are really talking about this like big problem, like who is this resilience for and how do we expect people to actually contribute if they are missing from the public sphere, so to speak. We have limited support structures. So as I mentioned, citizens are expected to prepare individually, but there's very little support for that. And we suggest that some kind of community level support would be needed in order to kind of like put all these individual skills and capabilities together. And underutilized civil society. Crisis organizations, they have clear roles what to do if there is a like large-scale power outage or another kind of crisis, war, for example. But we wanted to interview NGOs who are not considered crisis organizations, but which are nonetheless active active nationwide, so that they have wide networks, hundreds of thousands of people as their members, and still they say that we want to help, but we have no idea what to do. Like nobody's listening to us. We could use all this network, but we just don't know what to do. And that was kind of like a very common answer. And some preliminary measures. Obviously, we want to emphasize that co-resilience needs to be built better. So we need this structured collaboration between municipalities, NGOs, citizens, and authorities. And we've started with some interviews about authorities from municipalities, kind of preparedness authorities, and they have recognized that yes, municipality level could be the one to coordinate these actions if there was some kind of like systemic way to do it. And then we also suggest that we should have these local preparedness centers. That could be village halls, they could be churches, but some places with backup energy solutions, so that also the issue of backup power wouldn't be the responsibility of an individual household necessarily. Also, that is important as well. But we would have some, be it the village level or a neighborhood level, depending a little bit on the location in Finland. So we could have this one spot where we would have a backup power source, and also kind of like which would have the dedicated role in a case of a crisis. It wouldn't be an emergency shelter, but rather just kind of like a preparedness center, a little bit kind of like a low threshold help maybe. And then we need to enhance technological preparedness, support decentralized energy systems. Obviously, regulation is lacking behind. There are many issues. I won't go into them here. We need to improve building energy efficiency to slow heat loss during outages. This is related to the point before that there's money issues and some kind of like other issues. People don't want to do them, and even if they want, they might not be able to afford, especially in rural areas. If you need to take a loan for these energy renovations, banks won't necessarily give those to you if they see that the building is kind of like worthless and cannot be sold anymore. So how do you actually navigate that then? And then we encourage the use of electric vehicles as backup power sources, because obviously we are getting more and more electric vehicles and phasing out kind of like gas cars, so to speak. So we want to encourage the mindset that these could be used as backup power sources. And I don't know that I don't know if people actually even realize the possibility of that. So kind of we need more education about this whole thing. And we need to improve accessibility, financial support for renovations, especially for vulnerable groups, and also make sure that these energy resilience measures are possible regardless of income and location. And the final slide, that also we need to boost citizen energy skills. So not only like energy literacy, but just like the overall skill set, maybe at schools, kind of like some included in some subjects or something, but so that we understand more about energy. And integrate resilience education into public outreach, and also maybe schools would be a good place to start talking about this a little bit more. And this is kind of like, enable larger civil society participation through these structures that we from now on want to somehow create into our society. They are not there yet, but the aim is this kind of like, starting something, and we want to see this research continue for years on so that we can really contribute in that way. Also, regulations, they need to be streamlined. Permit processes are pretty awful. They can be very complicated and take a long time, and this authority and this authority and this and this and this, and in the end, how can you even do an energy renovation or anything in your home if you don't even know where to start with the permits? And overall, obviously, continuing climate action so that we necessarily wouldn't have so many power outages because of, for example, storms or something like that. So I think we will stop there, and I can put this slide here so that you can maybe look at it while we discuss if there are some questions. Thank you.
All right, so I have a question.
Yes.
But mine is from a research perspective. Your interviews with the NGOs, right? How were they conducted? Were they open-ended questions or closed-loop questions?
We had semi-structured.
Semi-structured.
Yes, semi-structured questions, so that we had like 10 initial questions, but we always ended up talking about this and that, and they brought up so many interesting points that we just kind of like yeah, we asked all the 10 questions, but maybe altogether there was something between 15 to 20 per interview because the discussion just kept going.
Okay, so how did you analyze those different responses that you got?
Thematic analysis.
All right, okay.
So very qualitative. I could have done content analysis or it could have been discourse analysis, but maybe there was a little bit too much material for discourse analysis. And as for content analysis, maybe a little bit too little material for that. So then we went for thematic analysis, which is kind of like a light way to get to the results pretty quick.
Do you know if there are some strategies about electricity vehicles? So in generally?
Do you know EVs?
Strategies for
Electricity vehicles, for example, because I think it's not so easy to use the electricity from the vehicle if the outside is really cold. So it's,
yeah.
I know it from Austria. If you want to put some electricity in your car, then and the outside is very cold, so it takes a long time.
But
the
the car will be used in a reverse mode as a battery.
It would be used as a battery, yes.
This
And,
is vehicle to grid
yeah.
applications.
Yeah.
But that's also not very widely
It's
used
only
now in
Yeah.
Finland.
But we also we want to look at the society, not how it is like tomorrow or a year after, but like, let's say 20 years from now on.
Yeah.
Like what kind of measures could we take then? And then obviously EVs are going to play a much larger role. But in order to get them into the picture, we have to start to make the kind of like regulatory changes now. And I've had some discussions with other people from more the technical side, and they've said that, yeah, maybe the single EV doesn't necessarily, the role is good for the one household. But if we talk about the preparedness centers, for example, let's take two electric buses, for example. There you have quite a nice battery to back up, for example, a church where people from the community could then gather, and it would be warm and everything. So
And it would be even, it's not so easy maybe to convince someone to borrow your electric vehicle for your neighbor or something.
Yeah.
So it's like this community scale is
community scale is better, yeah.
Maybe a comment, just because I like the point that it would be good to go into the schools, curriculum and stuff like that. It's nice to see, because it's popping up in so many countries in Europe by now, that more and more people are saying, look, we need to put it into the schools. Ireland is also very strong in like, this is something we have to think of, and it's important to do. So it's nice to see that other countries also considering this idea, at least, or being more aware of it, that this might be something we should do.
In Finland, the NGOs do a lot of kind of like this educating work, but our what we think is that it really can't be their responsibility to do that. It's amazing that they do it, but it shouldn't be expected if there isn't any additional funding for that.
There's some kind of change in the generations, because the older generations in Finland, they are really well prepared, and even my age. But then I see that the people from my children's age, they are not so. They don't know how to behave if you run out of electricity. They even don't know how that they need to put more clothes on, and then they don't want to look good.
It seems to be a general lack of energy literacy, certainly in Spain, and well, for what I've been listening these days everywhere. So I think we should really start from the schools, because many people don't even know what is a citizenry community.
Yeah.
I mean, we do know, but I talk to my friends, they don't have a clue. They don't even know that exists. And then the regulatory framework doesn't help. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so there is much to be done.
Yes.
And this was kind of like let's kick off this new thing in Finland and introduce this new conceptualization and kind of like start building the system from here.
Can I ask, do you think that this has become more talked about following the start of the war and so on? When it comes to climate change and the threat from Russia, is the threat from Russia perceived as something which is greater, or?
People are definitely more interested in energy, but also it's got to do with the price spikes, I would say. But we have had some disruptions in the Baltic Sea and all of those things. So I think people are definitely more aware of what could go wrong. But I don't know if it necessarily kind of like translates into actual behaviors, for example, in the urban areas.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Thank you all for sharing with us your important works and for your reflections. So,
Are we finished?
Yes.
yes.
And over time, I'm sorry.
No.
Everyone was really enjoying it.
Thank you.